Greetings, it's Iain from RTO here, and welcome to Pick and Mix, where we pick and mix it up each week. And we are going to do mixing it up this week, which means we're going to look at a producer. Now, today's producer was asked for by quite a few people, and it is Alan Parsons. Now, we all know Alan Parsons for the Alan Parsons Project and all them great albums. But we're not going to conclude them today because we all know them, and I thought I would look at the other work that he did in other bands, give myself a little bit more of a challenge, because my top 5 would all be Alan Parsons albums. So, Alan Parsons, OBE, born the 20th of December 1948. Now, before he became a producer, he was a sound engineer, and he worked on some really good albums. I'll go through them in a minute. Of course, then when he started producing, he produced his own group, the Alan Parsons Project, and his solo stuff, and has been very successful. He has been nominated for 13 Grammy Awards, with his first win occurring in 2019 for Best Immersive Audio Album for Eye in the Sky on its 35th anniversary edition. So that's just it. So as an engineer, so we'll quickly go through these because this is where he started. 69, he worked on Abbey Road. 1970, he worked on Atom Heart Mother as the sound engineer. 71, it was Stormcock from Roy Harper. He worked on Wildlife with Wings. Worked on the Dark Side of the Moon. He was sound engineer on Dark Side of the Moon, believe it or not. Wizard Brew from Wizard. Then he went on to Red Rose Speedway, Paul McCartney and Wings. He's just incredible. The Boulders by Roy Woods in 73, 74, The Hollies, 75, Another Night, The Hollies, and Ambrosia's debut album in 1975. So, before he started producing, he was cracking on. He was sound engineer on some great albums, so he sort of probably learnt his trade there. But in 1974, he took over the big chair as producer, and the first album that he produced in 1974 is from an album called From the Album of the Same Name by a band called Pilot. Remember them? This is the album that's got Magic on it, which is a pretty good track, and Never Give Up is another great track off that album. 74, he also went and worked with Courtney Rebel on the Psychomado album. I think I pronounced that right. Great album, known for not having guitars on it. Ritz and Tumbling Down are just terrific tracks on that album, and I do like that. So 1975, he's back working with Cockney Rebel, who are now called Steve Harley and the Cockney Rebel, and the brilliant album The Best Years of Our Lives. Panorama's brilliant on that, and then of course it's got Make Me Smile and Come Up and See Me, which is a classic. 75 again, he went and did another album with Pilot, Second Flight, which has got Call Me Around on it and the brilliant January. Thick, brilliant track. Busy year in 75 because he went and worked with Al Stewart on his Modern Times album. The brilliant Sirens of Titans and Not the One. Great tracks off that album. So we move into 76, and he goes and, well, it's ironically that he goes and produces a John Miles album. Rebel, brilliant album. It's got the fantastic music on it. It's got Alan Parsons written all over that track. Absolutely brilliant. Like High Fly, they are just two mega albums and tracks on that album from John Miles. We are going to be doing John Miles at some stage, so don't worry, folks. 76, he's back working with Al Stewart on the brilliant Year of the Cat. On the Border and Year of the Cat. I love that track. Absolutely brilliant. And then also in 76, he's got back working with Ambrosia, not as the sound engineer, but as the producer on their Somewhere I Never Travelled. Cowboy Star, it's a great song on that one. I like that one. And I also like Can't Let a Woman. Let's move on to 1978. And he's back working with Al Stewart on the Time Passages album. Time Passages is a great track, but my favourite one on there is the Palace of Versailles. Absolutely killer track. 79, he works with Lenny Zakatek. Now Lenny is part of the family of Alan Parsons project and Alan Parsons, and he put out a self-titled album. It's alright. Lenny's I'm listening to this album and it's a bit different from what he usually does. Do It All Right's okay there on that, and It's a Dancer. Then there's a bit of a break. Obviously he was working on his own stuff. So it's not until March 1984 that he gets back in the producer's chair, and he produces an album called Keats for a band called Keats, and it was a short-lived rock band, and it was an offshoot of the Alan Parsons project. So in here we've got Colin Blunston, Ian Barneson, of course, Peter Bardens, the great keyboard player, David Payton and Stuart Elliott. Great album. Put it this way, if you like Alan Parsons, you're going to like this. It's a really good track. Heaven's Known and Ask No Questions, and absolutely brilliant. 1985, he goes and produces a soundtrack from a film called Ladyhawke that was written by Andrew Powell. Interesting album. I have listened to it, but it's a soundtrack. But it's beautifully put together. Philippe's Escape's good, and the wedding music is fantastic. 1993, and now I wonder how many people know about this. We all know the album. It's the symphonic music of Yes. It's actually produced by Alan Parsons with Steve Howell. Best tracks on there are Wondrous Story and Starship Trooper. Great sort of symphonic versions of them. Great songs by Yes. Obviously he's doing lots of other things, touring and that, but it's in 2012 that he goes back in the chair and he produces an album for Jake Shimabukuro, which is a ukulele player, and the album's called Grand Ukulele. There's a track on it called Rolling in the Deep, which is wonderful. I love the ukulele, very clever little instrument, and he does a great version of Sting's Field of Gold on it. Absolutely brilliant. 2013, he goes and works with Steve Wilson as co-producer on Steve's brilliant The Raven That Refused to Sing and Other Stories. Fantastic album. And don't forget, tomorrow Steve Wilson's new album comes out. But this is a brilliant album. I'm not going to say too much because I am going to be doing something on Steve. Favourite tracks on here, I'll tell you them: The Holy Drinker and The Raven That Refused to Sing. Then in 2017, this is the most current thing he's done. It's Blackfield versus Blackfield. Interesting album. There's a couple of tracks on here that are pretty good. The Jackal and Salt Water. So that's the other stuff that Alan did apart from his own band. So worked with some interesting people. So this is the bit where I choose my top 5. This was very, very hard for me because I didn't have much of a list to choose from, and there are so many good ones. I'm going to do an honourable mention today, I never do them normally. It just missed out. And that is the symphonic music of Yes. I think this is a terrific album. It just shows what great songs Yes wrote. They do make great sort of classical. So I had to give it a mention. It didn't get in my top 5, but it's an album that I do play a lot. So I had to give it some mention. But we'll have a look at the 5. So my number 5 is from 1984, and it's the self-titled album Keats from the Side Shoot album of Alan Parsons project. So we've got, as I said, we've got Colin Blunstone doing the vocals, the wonderful Iain Barneson on the guitars, a brilliant Peter Bardens on keyboards, Davey Payton on bass. He went off and played with Fish eventually, Stuart Elliott on drums, and we had Richard Cottle doing a few bits and bobs and saxophones as well. So the first track on here was called Heavens No. I love this. Collins' voice is great, and then you get the lovely Peter Bardens keyboards. What more can you get? Brilliant. Tragedy, very pleasant song. Nothing special, but it's got some lovely guitar work from Iain. Flight to Win, Peter Bardens wrote this. Solid track. That lovely vocal from Colin. The bass line from Davey Payton. Brilliant. Walking on Ice, written by Davey Payton, and of course it's got a cool bass line. Absolutely brilliant. And the bass on here reminds me of some of the bass lines that he put down on Fish songs. Very good. How Can You Walk Away? Quirky little track. Some great keyboard from Peter. Then Turn Your Heart Around. Nice ballad. Avalanche. That's not too bad. Give It Up. No questions. No questions asked. Fantastic track. A Night of Full Voices, another sterling one. Hollywood Heart, brilliant. And then at the end of this you get an interview with Alan Parsons and Iain Barneson. What a way to win the album. So that was my number 5. My number 4 is from 76. It was the 7th album by Al Stewart, the brilliant Year of the Cat. Interesting people on here. We got Al Stewart on the vocals, of course, Peter White, Spanish guitar, Tim Renwick on guitar, Peter Wood on the keyboards, Don Lobster on keyboards, George Ford bass, Stuart Elliott on the drums. Some great tracks on here. The brilliant Lord Grenville, On the Border's pretty cool, of course. Midas Shadow, nice track. Sand in Your Shoes, If It Doesn't Really Come Naturally, great track. Flying Sorcery, Broadway Hotel, one stage, and then the fantastic Year of the Cat. Good album. We haven't done Al Stewart yet, but I'm sure we will. Number 3, got a 1975. It's the 3rd album by Steve Harley and the Cockney Rebel, The Best Years of Our Lives. Steve Harley on the vocals, Jim Cregan on guitars, George Ford on bass. It's amazing all these people appear on each other's albums. Duncan Mackay on electric piano, Stuart Elliott again on drums. Introducing the Best Years, great track. The brilliant The Mad Mad Moonlight. Mr. Raffles, of course, It Wasn't Me, the wonderful Panorama. The classic Make Me Smile and Come Up and See Me. Back to the Farm and the 49th Parallel, The Best Years of Our Lives. Great album. One of them classic albums from the 70s. My number 2 album, this is from 76. The first solo of John Miles. I'm not going to go into too much detail on this, because we are going to be doing John Miles very soon. It's coming up the list to be actually listened to, so we'll just go who's on it. We've got John Miles on lead vocals, keyboards, guitars and synthesizers, Bob Marshall on the bass, Barry Black's on the drums, and Andrew Powell does all the orchestral. Starts off with the wonderful music. Classic. Brilliant song. Everyone Wants Some, a really good track. I love the piano on that. High Fly, another classic from John Miles. You Have It All. Dramatic, do love it. Rebel, the title track. Great track there. You Lose Somebody So Young, really nice song. I think maybe something a bit personal about that. Lady of My Life, a funky old track from 1976 with a great sax solo on it. Pull the Damn Thing Down, a great little rocker. Then we have a reprise of music, the orchestral bit at the end. But it's always the best bit. But my number one album, produced by Alan Parsons, is it's a co-produced. He worked with Steve Wilson. And it is The Raven That Refused to Sing and Other Stories. This was Steve's third solo album that came out in 2013. And I'm not going to go again into too much information, but he also Alan was also the sound engineer, so he sort of co-produced and was sound engineer on this. The band, Steve Wilson, vocals and mellotrons, guitars. Guthrie Govan on the guitar, great guitar player, played with Asia, of course. Nick Beggs from Kachagoogoo plays bass and the Chapman stick on Holy Drinker. Adam Holtzman, Marco Miniman on drums, he's drummed with lots of people. Theo Travis on flute. Alan Parsons plays wah wah on here as well. And Dave Stewart performed the session orchestral stuff as well. So some great people on here. So we got Illuminol, great track, funky. Drive Home, gentle track, love that. The Wonderful Holy Drinker, great wah wah on there from Alan on the guitar. The Pin Trap, just gentle, nice guitar solo. The Watchmaker, a bit heavy in places when Steve Wilson goes mad. The Raven That Refused to Sing, one of the great songs on this album. And that was the last track. So there we go. There's my top 5 albums that was sort of produced and sound engineered and what have you by Alan Parsons. The reason I chose that was my number one because he sort of co-produced and sound engineered on it, and this is what that's where Alan cut his trade as a producer, as the sound engineer, and it's a wonderful album, that Raven That Refused to Sing. But we'll talk about that at another date. So there we go, folks. That's all for today, except of course live stream tonight, where we can catch up and have a proper chat. Tomorrow it's Friday, which means it's live album ranking, and we got a very short one, but 2 great albums by the Waterboys, and also we've got a couple of new albums for you. The new album from Stained, which is called The Confessions of the Fallen, and another live album from the magnificent Steve Hackett, and it is Foxtrot at 50 and other stuff recorded in Brighton. So we're going to have a look at that as well tomorrow. Have a great day, everyone, and I will see you later tonight on the live stream. Bye for now.